All right, welcome everyone to the second Zoom session for the summer road trip Shawl KAL. I hope you're all having fun with your shawls and progressing along on your summer vacation, whether it's a staycation or a actual road vacation. It's been fun to see some posts because people are popping up and saying, you know, hey, I've taken this on the road, or hey, I'm staycationing, and I'm like, this is really fun. Anyway, so a few housekeeping things as usual at the start of these meetings. So what we'll do is we'll have everybody muted right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some tips and tricks and little bits of pieces that'll make the finishing of your shawls nice and easy and fun to do. And then we're going to do some show and tell tonight. And anybody who would like to show off their progress or chat about things, ask questions and so on, we're going to leave plenty of time for that. Hopefully I don't get my little engine going too much and end up talking the whole time away, because I'm really looking forward to seeing some other shawls. As part of this particular Zoom event, for the people who are currently in the room and at the session, we're going to do some prize draws. So we're going to have two $50 gift certificates to draw for tonight. So we'll draw those at different points in the meeting, and you do need to be here in order to be able to claim your prize. If you are not able to stay for the entire meeting, or if you don't win, remember that I love to give out prizes and things like that. So when we finish the KAL on August 19th, there will be some more prizes to be winning. So keep your social media posts going on Instagram, Facebook, our Facebook group, and Ravelry, because you will continue to be eligible for the second round of prize drawings at that time. And we have a nice grand prize, which will be a big shawl kit of your choice. You can choose any of the kits on our website, and up to and including the ones that are large, like the Roman Villa with its 5 skeins, or you can choose something a little bit more restrained. So it'll be completely up to you. And then we have 3 really exciting notions packs to give away with all sorts of goodies involved there. So really pretty stitch markers and some beautiful lantern moon notions and tins and things like that. So you'll definitely want to stick around for those prizes and make sure that you keep on entering. The other thing that we thought we would do tonight, just for fun, is we're going to do a mini scavenger hunt. So we're going to give you 2 words in the course of this evening, and you'll be able to put those words into your next order on our website to get some free stuff included with your order. We have a maximum number of 28. So the first 28 people who do that will get things like really adorable stitch markers. We have a whole bunch of Canadiana progress keepers and other assorted nifty little goodies that will go with those. So you don't actually have to be at a market in order to get the words tonight. We're going to do them as part of this Zoom, because I get a kick out of our scavenger hunts and we're not doing a market again for a couple of months. So why not throw them in tonight? So there will be 28 opportunities to get those with your next order. Let's see if we have any other exciting things that I have forgotten to say. So like I say, a reminder that the final prizes for the KAL will be drawn on August the 19th. And in order to be eligible, all you have to do is post somewhere, somehow about your shawl. You don't have to be finished. So some of us are finished, some of us will not be. That's okay. If you have this much of your shawl done and you post it on social media so we can see it, that enters you. If you've already posted, yes, those are going to get included again, because I just cannot bear to leave people out of it in any way, shape, or form. So I'd love to see more progress photos, but if you have posted at least once, then you will be in the second draw as well. So Wendy, can you think of anything that I have forgotten there? And you're muted. I'm guessing not.
There. I was going to say August 19th, because you might be on the road to Edmonton on August 19th.
Yes.
So will you do the prize draws earlier in the day, or do we want to extend it till?
I think what we'll do is we'll draw them around noon then, because I really don't want to go too far forward, because, you know, there's other people with KAL starting up, and some that I actually just got a message from was Under the Elm, for example, who's setting up some interesting KALs. So we want to let people finish this KAL so that they can get started on the next one. And, you know, if you're not finished your shawl at the end of this one, you can just keep on knitting while you're perusing the opportunities for future KALs.
So we, of course, noon Calgary time on the 19th of August. Okay.
Exactly. Thank you, Wendy. Okay, so I thought what I would do is just do a little bit of review on the shawl because I've had a number of questions over the last couple of weeks and I thought I would answer some of those and then also cover a few things that you're going to need if you haven't already finished your shawl and if you're a little less experienced with some of these things. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the shape of the shawl. And if you would like to, well, no, I'll spotlight it, Dan, never mind. I am good at these things. Ha, ha, ha. Oh, apparently you have a whole bunch of spotlights on here. Good Lord, replace spotlight. Replace spotlight. Okay, hopefully this is the only one that's spotlighted now. So Dan, if you can double check that you don't have anyone else spotlighted, that would be great because what will happen is that the only thing that's spotlighted once we've done that is going to show up on the recording. So what I have on the screen here, and hopefully everybody can see it, is the schematic that's included in this pattern. And this is the shape of the shawl once it's finished and blocked. Now, no matter how big or small your shawl is, it's going to be shaped like this because the way that the pattern works is no matter how many skeins of yarn you knit into it, it will continue this curving shape. This edge here is the final edge where you're going to cast off, and this is where you started. So you'll get a second point here, and you'll get a little point there. This second point is where the start of your row is. So this is the inside curve. And this other point here is the end of your row. That's where you're turning your work to go to the wrong side. So this is if you were standing above your shawl, looking at it from above. And this is the shape that it'll take when it's blocked. So one of the things that I notice that sometimes when you're knitting a shawl and it's a little bit of a more unusual shape that you might not be familiar with is that one doesn't really know what shape that shawl is going to form. So this one forms this shape here. This is called an asymmetric bias shawl. And the reason it's a bias is that it curves. So it's knit on the bias and the stitches actually flow like this. So they have lines there. So hopefully the people who are hearing what I'm saying, they flow like this. You'll be able to see that on this thing, this schematic here, and the stitches flow like that. So one of the things that I've had a couple of people get a little bit kerfuffled on, not a lot, but a little bit, is how to handle the yarn when you're getting to the edges of your shawl and you're coming up with your color sections. So I just want to remind you that this is a really flexible pattern. Here is an itty bitty little shawl that I'm going to actually show you how to block a little later on. And if your color runs over the edge of the shawl, like you can see where my finger is, or this one up here, then what you're going to do is at the edge of the shawls, just revert to whatever you were doing there normally. So there's a little tiny garter stitch border on each edge of the shawl. And instead of doing your pattern stitch like here, you just switch to knitting normally as the border is written. So when you get to the borders, just knit them as normal. You don't want to do any of your assigned pooling stitches on the borders because that just makes them complicated and weird and confusing. So you'll just abandon ship on assigned pooling stitches like your reverse stocking stitch or your seafoam stitch and knit the borders as normal. Another question that I've had come up from a number of people is the edge and how tight is that supposed to be? And what do I do if I'm finding it's really pulling in? Now, first of all, if you look at this little sample here, you see how it's all rumpled and crinkly looking and it doesn't lie flat or nicely. That's normal. Don't worry about that. Your edge is actually going to block out and the whole shawl will be just fine. When you pull it out and flat and tight, it definitely behaves itself and it lies as it should. So if your shawl is looking a little bit like some sort of like I drowned it and crumpled it up and left it in the corner washcloth, that's normal. This will all block out. If it's really, really, really tight and it's worrying you, one of the ways that you can adjust the edge of your shawl is by increasing the size of your yarn over. So perhaps what you'll want to do is do the longer version of a yarn over. And if you go back to our first Zoom session, there is a demonstration of how to make a longer yarn over there. The other is if you're doing those already and it's still pulling really tight, what you can do is do a double yarn over. So on the wrong side row where you're doing a single yarn over, just wrap it around the needle twice. And that will give you a lot more slack on the edge. So that'll give you a much looser edge when you do that. So if you're a naturally really tight knitter and you're worried about this being really super tight here, just increase the length of the yarn over so you have a little extra slack on there. I've never actually run into a student or somebody who had an issue with a bias shawl being super, super too tight and the shawl not being able to be blocked out. But like I say, if you prefer it to be looser and softer, you can add something there by just increasing the size of the yarn overs. So if you make them double yarn overs, what you'll get is a bigger lace hole on the edge, which can be pretty. So you can see there's one here, and that's where I have deliberately done a larger yarn over, which gives you more slack here and gives you a more open hole. And that will allow you to block the shawl out more loosely and not worry about the edge pulling in. However, one of the details about this particular shawl that this tighter edge gives you is that it really helps the shawl hold its shape. So instead of this kind of, ending up as a weird floppy, straight, triangular thing, that slightly tighter inner edge is working to continue to keep that nice curved shape on your shawl. So when you block it and you wear it extensively, this gives some support and some shaping to that inner edge, which is the part that'll end up around your neck. And it helps the shawl to hold its shape overall for years to come. So instead of the shawl getting kind of floppy and misshapen, that tighter edge will definitely work in your favor. I've used this before in other designs, and I really like the way that it stands up to wear over time. Plus, it does give you a nice smooth edge against your neck and just a little bit of decorative element there as well. But don't worry too much about that right now. Until you block your shawl, it is going to look a little bit like, I say, a washcloth that you balled up and chucked in a corner of your bathroom. And that is completely normal with unblocked shawls, especially when you're using a fluffy merino style yarn. But it will block out nicely, and I'm going to show that to you this evening. So while we're on the subject, and I'm going to change this now, remove spotlight, put the spotlight back on me. Ooh, look at that. I'm getting so good at these. Does anybody have any questions about how we're doing the 2 assigned pooling stitches? Because I'm happy to demonstrate them again if somebody would like that. So if you want to unmute and let me know if you have questions about the assigned pooling stitches. Sounds like we're good to go on that. So I'm not going to actually review them this evening, but if you are confused by them or you want to play around with them, you're more than welcome again to go back to our first session and look at the video there. And you're always welcome to contact me if you've got any questions about the shawl. If you want some thoughts on how you might change it in some way, feel free to talk to me, because let's face it, it's really fun for designers to be able to talk knitting. And quite often we put our patterns out into the wilderness and then there's sort of like a silence, a void. So if you want help, designers always like to help with things like that. They like to give you tips and tricks and that sort of thing. All right.
Caroline, I just wondered if I could ask you about getting to the end of the purl row, and if you could explain or show us how to do that again, because sometimes I don't know why, but I get a little confused. So
everybody does, and it doesn't matter how long you've been knitting, there's times where things will actually throw you. So I have a little swatch here that I've actually been doing with moss stitch because I want to go over the cast off. And Dan, if you can change the spotlight to the document camera. Dan, Earth to Dan. All right, never mind, I'll do it. Okay, we're good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to purl along as if I'm on the wrong side of my shawl here and making sure that I'm under the actual spot. Keep telling other people that if you want to know where you are on these cameras, where you're looking at down at somebody's work, if you put something on the background, then you can center your hands over it so people can see it. And then I never actually get around to putting that on myself. So, some people's children here. So when we get to the end of the purl row, eventually I had to make a giant swatch. Okay, we're homing in, we're at the last 2 stitches, and this is where we're going to do that little bit of garter stitch that forms the edge of the shawl. Let's see if we can get this to focus here a little nicer. There we go. So there's 2 different ways that you can do the yarn over that's done 2 stitches before the edge, and that is you can either do a yarn over the needle, which is a short yarn over. So it's got a very short amount of space to travel there. Or what you can do is you can do a yarn over that goes around the needle. Now that is actually going to add more slack to the edge of your shawl. So when we were talking about issues with it being very tight, that's one of the ways that you can handle adding a little bit more ease on the edge of your shawl. So you can either just lift the yarn over the needle and switch to the knitting stitch, which is the next stitch there, which would give you your shawl edge, or you can wrap the yarn all the way around the needle, going under it and around. And that gives you a much larger yarn over on the edge of your work there and gives you more ease on that edge. So once you've purled up to that point, you do a yarn over, whichever way you would prefer to do, and then you're going to knit the last 2 stitches. The first stitch of each row is slipped because that gives you a nice smooth edge, and it also puts some structure on the edge of your shawl so that they don't stretch out and sag. This shawl is designed in a merino nylon, and it's a superwash. A merino is very soft and very floppy, and it will definitely stretch out over time. So designers will often put a slip stitch on the edge of the shawl, both to make the shawl look nice and finished and smooth, but it also puts some structure in there and keeps the shawl holding its shape from year to year. So you'll see various different structural type edges on there. Like, for example, one that I know that I really like and that Stephen West happens to use a lot, and that's an I-cord edge. And an I-cord edge on a shawl, especially with these ones made with superwash type yarns and superwash merino in particular, really helps to give some structure and a smooth edge so that you don't have the garter bumps rubbing against the inside of your neck too. So the one shawl that I designed used a higher twist yarn, Monument Valley. And that one, the slipped edge on the inside made the shawl much more comfortable on your neck because garter ridges on the edge there can be quite uncomfortable. And it's funny, I was telling somebody today about a really nice sweater designed by Andrea Mowry, the Weekender. And I love the Weekender sweater, but when I knit it, it has a tubular cast off on ribbing that comes up to about there on the neck. And for me, it was unwearable because I am a princess and my neck would get extremely irritated by it. So I gave that one away, and I'm going to knit another one and actually change the cast off there so that it's a smooth cast off. Oh, look, Zoom bombing by a cat. Change the cast off so that it's a little bit, still got that structure that a tubular cast off gives, but smoother because it's not going to cause a big red spot on my neck. So these are some of the choices that go into these designs, and these are some of the reasons for why we finish them the way we do. Did that answer the question, Teresa?
Yes, it did. And I sort of got that idea, but if you forget and don't do the same one every time, does it really matter?
It doesn't matter if you flip back and forth between them, and it doesn't matter if you do them differently on the right side versus the wrong side in terms of the yarn overs. Now, something else that I know that I've had 1 or 2 people concerned about, which is they worry about what if they knit the stitch on the start of the row instead of slipping it. You're never going to notice it later, people, because I'll tell you a secret. If you look at the shawl that I designed, the one that's in the photos, I can guarantee you that there are 2 of those in there and you can't find them. I've actually tried to show somebody going back over that shawl where those mistakes are, where I forgot to slip the edge and I couldn't find them myself. So don't worry about that stuff. It'll disappear into the knitting, especially once it's blocked. Yes, your tail is very helpful, Sprite. Heather is saying in the comments that she may or may not have done that in her shawl. Yeah, that was definitely one of the things that we all talked about. And like I say, I said to people, just don't worry about it because you really won't see it later on. Blocking solves a world of things. And one of the things that it does is that it will pull your edge very smooth and tight. And if you've got a little bump in there from knitting instead of slipping, you won't find it. In fact, I thought there was one in this little miniature shawl. I swear to goodness, there is one. There it is. So when I pull it tight, you really can't tell, but there's one right there where I actually knit it instead of slipping it. So once it's blocked, they'll vanish completely. So don't worry about the edges of your shawl. For one thing, this is a vacation piece. So, you know, everything comes out in the blocking on this one, and any mistakes that you make, they just become design elements.
That's what I really like about this pattern. I was meaning to tell you is that it's sort of free flowing, and it doesn't matter if you do something a little bit differently.
That's very true. And I'm glad that you're enjoying that because it was part of what I wanted to do with this one. I just wanted some fun summer knitting that would give me something that would be highly wearable later on. So Sprite is really helping me right now while I put my stitches back on my needle. So that's kind of handy because I wanted to show people the cast off. So the cast off chosen for this shawl, oh my goodness, Sprite, you are just being a little monster tonight, aren't you? You have never been this bad before. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the cast off, because there's lots of different ways to cast off shawls. And basically the wisdom for casting off on a shawl is that you want some elasticity in the cast off that you choose. If you use the standard old-fashioned cast off, or most common cast off of you knit two and then you pass a stitch over, there's very little elasticity in that cast off. A lot of the cast offs that have more ease to them, there's one simple secret, which is that regardless of what you're doing, you are knitting two stitches together instead of passing one over, and then you're putting the stitch that results from knitting those two together back on the left needle. When you do that, you're putting more yarn overall into the cast off edge, and it gives you some elasticity. If you chew my blush needle, Missy, we are going to have words together, you and I. She is completely ignoring my, like threats of mayhem here. Give me that. Honestly, move. Very, very cute, but you're also very naughty. So the cast off used for this shawl is kind of fun because what it is a hybrid that is some elasticity, but not 100% elasticity. This is an example of a regular cast off where I have knit two together, pass them back to the left-hand needle, and then knit two together, pass them back onto the left-hand needle. And as you can see, there is some give and some ease in this cast off. So this is a really common one when you want some elasticity, but you don't want it to be super stretchy. If you had a lace edge on your shawl, you'd want to go for something super stretchy because then you'd be able to block that lace out to its full and best advantage. So something like Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off is fabulous in those cases. But any of these bind offs that do that business where you're knitting two together or purling two together or knitting them through the back loop and putting them back on the left needle will give you this ease that you see in this one, but it also then ends at a certain point where it becomes quite firm. It also will give you a really nice looking cast off edge. It's a little bit more decorative. So you can see this one is just a little bit pretty here. So the one used in this particular shawl, you'll find the instructions for on page 4. And this particular cast off is a hybrid of that. And what it does is it gives you just a wee bit of patterning going on. So what we're trying to do with it is to maintain the patterning happening. What have I done here? It's amazing when you go to pick up your stitches again and the small feline comes and starts biting the end of your needles at the same time. What happens? Okay. So this adds a little bit of ease to the edge of your shawl, but it doesn't make it super floppy, because if we had done a super floppy cast off on this particular shawl, you'd find that the top border would lack a lot of integrity and it would rumple. So you'd get this sort of ruffled effect if we used a Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off on it. So it's actually a kind of fun thing to play with, trying different bind offs. And if you ever want to experiment, make a little bitty shawl like this and then bind it off, look at how it behaves, and then rip the bind off and then do a different one. And it'll teach you a lot about them. But this one gives you some ease, not as much ease as others, because we want some structure from it. So the way that it works is exactly like we were talking about, where you're going to knit one, and then you want to make sure that your yarn is at the back of the needle for the next stitch. Then you're going to slip the stitch on your right hand needle back onto the left hand needle. So you've got two there. Then what you're going to do is you're going to knit two together. Whoops. Let's see if I can try and keep that actually on the needles. Why am I not being able to knit? I'm going to blame Sprite, even though she's not here anymore. So you've got two knit together. Now you're going to put the yarn to the front. You're going to slip the stitch on the right hand needle back to the left. And you see how the yarn now comes out between the two stitches that are on your left-hand needle. Then what you're going to do is you're going to purl two stitches together. Then you're going to repeat from the start. So you just move the yarn to the back, slip the stitch on the right-hand needle to the front, the left-hand needle. You're going to knit two together, move the yarn to the front, slip the stitch on the right-hand needle back to the left-hand needle, and you're going to purl two together. So this is adding ease, because every time that you slip that stitch back onto the left-hand needle and knit it again, or purl it in this case, what it's going to do is put more yarn into your cast off edge, which gives you that elasticity. And this one does something really fun, which you can see here where my finger is it adds a little bit of a decorative element to it. So you get these vertical lines appearing in your cast off edge, and they just kind of enhance that moss stitch. So this is a variation of this particular cast off that works with moss stitch. It would also work if you were casting off on a ribbed edge. You'd get that little nice decorative edge on there. And I don't actually have my shawl here with me because I have given it to Stephanie, who's going to demonstrate some ways to wear the shawl. But honest to God, Sprite, you are being the worst cat ever. Stop biting that. Okay, so there we can see some more of those, the light stitches there where it's just putting this little bit of decorative edge on there. So when we go and we pull on that, again, we have that little bit of slack that's happening there. So you can block your shawl out and really see your moss stitch, but it provides support to the edge of the shawl so that it doesn't ruffle and it doesn't sag. However, what happens if you're a really tight knitter and you're having trouble with that? Well, there's a very easy solution. And what you're going to do is just switch to a larger size needle. So anytime that you're a really tight knitter and you're struggling with a really tight bind off that needs to be looser, just go up a needle size or even 2. So that's a trick too that you can use with I-cord, because I-cord can sometimes really pull in. But if you go up a couple of needle sizes, then your I-cord will lie with the same gauge as the rest of the body of your shawl. So I wanted to show you how that bind off works with a little bit of a demonstration so that it would make sense. It's very easy to do, but the problem is sometimes that something's really easy to do gets confusing because of it. So does anyone have any questions on that? Or would you like me to continue binding this swatch off?
That would be very nice to see the whole thing because I like the way the colors are coming up.
Okay, I will keep on doing a little more here. It's a nice one too, because it keeps you from getting too bored. And if you have a really long edge and you're binding off a large amount, if you have a bind off that's more fun to do, it means that you don't want to sort of, you know, start screaming and running madly around the room, which is my urge quite often. You'll notice too that when I'm putting the stitch back on the left-hand needle, I'm not really pulling it tight. You don't need to. They'll naturally snug up as you keep on moving your needles. Just double checking that you can actually see what I'm doing there. Tiny bad cat helping me all the way. What you can't see is she's actually biting my ball of yarn right now. So as we go, you can see that that bind off is producing those vertical loops on the edge of the bind off there, just a little bit of decoration that continues the flow of the moss stitch. So it's a nice bind off with some elasticity, and you can use it on all sorts of different projects, and you can substitute it as well. So this is one of a whole series of these, moving the stitch back to the left, and then you either knit through the back loop or you knit through the front loop or you purl, and they're really handy for adding a little bit of, like I say, ease and decorative element to it. So this is a really good bind off for something like this because it allows the shawl to hold its shape and it gives it some, you know, added attraction. Okay, so Missy whacking her tail around everything. The other thing that I wanted to do was to demonstrate a little bit of blocking. There's all sorts of different ways to block shawls. And Dan, I'm just double checking that we have the spotlight still on the camera looking down because I want people to be able to see this later on. So we have a
yes,
little
we do.
Excellent, thank you. And what I found for this particular shawl or shawls like it is that wet blocking really helps. So there's steam blocking, there is blocking where you can spray with a spray bottle and just dampen it, or there's let's soak this puppy and get it really good and wet. And what we're going to do with this one is wet block it. So I'm going to take the thing that Lily keeps drinking from, and we're just going to soak this down. When you are washing or blocking hand-dyed yarns, if you use really hot water, then you're going to have the risk of potentially shaking some of the dye loose. So you want to use cool water when you're doing this. And if it's having trouble picking up the water, then put just a tiny dab of dish soap in it, and that'll break the surface tension and let the knitting pick up the water. You don't need to leave it in there for a long time because all hand-dyed yarns have been washed repeatedly and they're not full of oils. And you see how it hasn't dumped any color in there. That's because cool water doesn't shake loose dye bonds. If you have really alkali water, like if you're living on the prairies, if you put a bit of acid in there, you will also help to protect your color over the years. Ha! Sprite just knocked a bunch of stuff over and scared herself. It will help you to preserve color if you put a bit of acid in the water. So once we've wetted our little shawl, what we're going to do is just roll it in some towels and squish the water out of it. And this doesn't take a lot of time. You're just going to squish it for a few seconds in there. Show it who's boss. That'll suck out enough water that you'll then be able to do your wet blocking. So now it's wet, but it's not sodden. So let's get a little tiny blocking mat here. And you can see how already it's looking a lot less like that drowned washcloth. When you're going to block a shawl like this, looking at your schematic can help you laying out your shawl because you'll already have an idea of the shape that you're going to have. So if we look at our schematic, you can see that you've got that nice curve starting from your point, and then your long edge fanning out on the other side there. And if you look at this little shawl, you can see that same shape is there, even though this is a mini. To start blocking this, the easiest way to do this is to start from the pointy tip. And we're going to do something that shawl knitters need to learn to do to make this a lot less agonizing, and that's to kind of read how the knitting wants to sit. One of the things that frustrated me for many years is you'd buy a shawl pattern for a beautiful shawl. Great example is Find Your Fade. You knit that wonderful shawl and you go to block it. You have no actual idea what this thing is shaped like because all the pictures are the shawl on somebody's body and there's no schematic. So being able to read a shawl as you block it is actually a really useful skill. And that I'm going to give you a few tips on. So with this one, what we're going to do is we're going to start out and we're going to put a pin in the tip of the shawl because now we've got something already to work from. And then we're going to work along the inside edge, pinning it into place because that's the one that's the most rigid. That's the one that's the tightest. And so that's the one that we're going to hold down. And if you go long distances in between pins, you can find that it's going to start distorting and not giving you a nice smooth shape when you're pinning the rest of it. And if you're trying to block lace in there, you do need a lot of tension on it. And that's called hard blocking when you put lots of tension on. So what I usually do is put them no more than an inch apart. So I'm going to put some pins on here and then we're going to make sure that the camera picks up those pins. And we know that the inside edge is curved, so we're going to let it lie as it wants to. What I'm using are rust-free T-pins, and where I'm putting them is, when we lift the other part of the shawl up, see that little bit of garter stitch? Come on, camera, you can focus. A little bit of garter stitch that leads up to the very edge of the shawl. That's where I'm sticking my pin because that's a nice solid spot in the knitting. So you can put your pin right smack there, and then you can pull really hard against those places, but you're not going to have a lot of trouble with your shawl distorting. So you can pull out, you can hard block against there, and you're going to have it held nicely in place if you put the pins there. So anytime that you're doing blocking on a shawl, look for a place that has a junction of threads because that'll give you something to pull against later on when you're blocking this. Another tool that you can use for blocking are knit blockers. And these are really great because they have multiple pins in there. So they'll put 4 pins in where I'm putting 1. And knit blockers can be put along there. All you have to do is pull this out to the tension that you want it and pop your knit blocker in. For this particular shawl, when I blocked it, what I did was I put my curve in with my single pins along the inside edge, and then I used knit blockers on the outside. But you can do it either way. So you've got this edge pinned along here now, and don't do the entire shawl. Work your way up the shawl. And now you're going to tighten the shawl up to give it a good hard block to open everything out. So I could use a knit blocker and I can pull against these pins here and pull it out. You see how this is now stretched out? And this is easier on the shawl if the shawl is good and damp. That's why I like to wet block a shawl like this because it gives me lots of slack and allows those stitches to move along. So it's held out really nice and tight. And what you're going to do from here is you're going to look at your rows, and I want you to look at how the stitches are falling because the stitches will actually tell you if you've got this thing really wacky or not. So sometimes if you're blocking it wrong, your stitches should go across the rows the way the shawl was knit because the shawl was knit across, right? But if your stitches are heading off that way, then you know you've pulled that edge too tight. So these are things that no one told me, but that I had to learn the hard way by blocking a shawl and going, oh my goodness, that doesn't look right. So when I'm laying this one out, what I want to see in the final blocked piece is that I'm not interfering with the normal direction of the stitches, that they're all flowing as you would expect to see them if you knit a piece of stocking stitch, because that's what we really have done. So we don't want to distort the knitting. We want to just continue to work with it. Now, if I pin this one really, really tightly and got a little bit wrong, and I try pulling it out, so let's use a blocker and let's pull this bit out. Come on, you. So you see how my rows are suddenly running in a diagonal way here? So I've gone off. These ones are running normally, they're going up. And then when we get to this part, suddenly my rows are they're leaning in a different direction. So that tells me that I'm not actually following the way the shawl was knit and the way it wants to be blocked. So this is the kind of thing that I hope will help you when you're blocking these, is just to work from side to side up the shawl and watch what the rows are doing, because you want the rows to flow normally through your shawl. And that will really help you with any shawl, including some of those really wild and crazy Stephen West shawls, where he may have shown you a schematic, but it's like, I've never knit anything like this in my life. So working side to side, making sure that you're keeping those stitches flowing normally will give you a nicely blocked shawl. Now, the other reason why I don't pin the whole thing out all at once is sometimes you'll come along and go, whoops, I got one of my angles incorrect, or I got way off base. And now when I go, the further I go, the more the shawl is going to distort. So if you just work back and forth nicely, taking your time, then you will not have to go back and keep on repinning. So do you see how this one is flowing now, with the stitches all going in the same direction in the part that I've pinned out? And I've put it a bit under tension. What'll happen is when you take this out, once it's dry, and it takes, depending on your climate and humidity, at least a day to dry, but super secret, sneaky hint, put a fan on it, speeds it up tremendously. When you take them out, the shawl will collapse together a little bit, so it's going to pull in a bit. But by pulling it out like this, you're going to have all of these lying nice and the way they should. And you see how you have your seafoam stitch nicely opened out. So we just want to keep following along about an inch apart on that nice firm edge there. And if you notice after a while that you've got a pin out of place, you can always come along and move it again. And again, we're just going to keep working up the outside edge of the shawl, pulling those stitches snug, but not distorting the rows of knitting. So once we start doing it that way, you can read the knitted work when you're blocking it, and you don't necessarily have to work with a schematic. But see how much this is pulled out by the blocking? That's what you want. You want it under tension, because later on, your piece is going to hold all of these nice and flat and open. And then the slipped edges give you something to resist against too when you're blocking and wearing it. So are there any questions about that? If not, Wendy, it's time to draw a gift certificate, and we'll give you a scavenger hunt word as well. So Wendy is going to go from the people who are in the Zoom call right now, and she is going to randomly select a winner for a $50 Ancient Arts gift certificate. And I'm going to give you our first word, which is summer. Summer. So the next time you order from us, you're going to put your 2 words in your shipping instructions, or you're going to email them to us, and we're going to include a nice little gift for you. Thanks, Donna. I'm glad that that helped. I do know that it was a painful process to learn to block shawls, because Mom did not teach me that stuff. So word number 1 is summer. There's one other thing that while Wendy is doing her drawing that I wanted to show you, and then we're going to start our show and tell, and that's blocking wires. So blocking wires come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and flexibilities, and some are really stiff and some aren't. They can be really nice for shawls on something like, for example, your cast off edge. And what you do with the blocking wires, you can just weave them in and out just below your cast off edge, the actual cast off. And that allows you to quickly block an entire section of the shawl, and you'll just put pins in to stabilize that. But you see how you can pull that whole thing out with the wire there. So blocking wires can be really handy, especially for shawl knitters. The only thing about blocking wires is that you have to watch the ends on them, because some blocking wires do not have a nicely shaped end on them, and you can snag the living daylights out of a merino shawl, and then you will be very sad and you will shake your fist at them. So blocking wires can be very helpful for all sorts of things. And one of the things that I'll do on a shawl like Find Your Fade, if there's a center spine, if you're doing a triangular shawl or an asymmetric shawl that has a row of decreases, run a wire down that to keep that part straight, and that'll help with the blocking process too. All right, are you ready to announce, Wendy, out loud?
Yes, the winner is Carolyn.
Congratulations, Carolyn, a namesake. So Carolyn, what you're going to do is you're going to email sales@ancientartsfiber.com, and then Wendy will arrange to set up your gift certificate. So we have now come to the part where I am hoping that we'll play some show and tell. And as part of show and tell, Steph is going to give you some suggestions on how to style your finished shawls. So if you want to do some show and tell, if you'd like to show your piece off, if you want to put your hand up, then Dan can spotlight you and we can all enjoy your work. And you can do the hand up either as a real hand up, or you can do it as the Zoom hand up. And normally, if you click on the more button, you will find those hand raising things at the bottom there, or the top right if it's a device. So Dan, if you'd like to spotlight Grace.
Good.
Sorry, just hang on one sec.
Okay, keeps moving. You spotlight somebody.
Okay, I've got Grace spotlighted.
Awesome.
Okay, let me just get this out of my, okay, okay. Right, okay, so I used, I didn't use any of the kit yarn. I chose 3 Valley Gap, which was in my stash. And I'm just thrilled the way that it turned out. I couldn't help stop. I mean, once I started, I couldn't stop. And just the way that it came together was so cool. And it reminded me of the place namesake that the yarn is named after. And I don't know, like each of the squiggly bits, I found, you know, when you first look at it, it looks sort of all the same, but I was really able to do a lot of improvisation about where exactly I was going to put that in, or whether it was going to be a reverse stocking stitch, and how I decided to do the top and the bottom of it really kind of made it look a little bit different. Anyway, that's my shawl.
Well, it's gorgeous, and I'm so
Yes.
excited it shows that color, because, you know, I don't know why it never occurred to me at all, but that's one of the very first colorways that I developed, and it's near and dear to my heart. And I'm like, so gonna have to make one now that I've seen yours, because it's so beautiful.
It is beautiful, and it's so, the colors for me are so wearable.
Fabulous, thank you.
That's beautiful. Next up, I have Janice.
Hi. So I've actually made 2, almost 3 shawls. Unfortunately, the third one, I left it at my friend's house today, so I don't have it with me. But so these are things that this one I dyed myself.
Oh, fabulous.
And following the instructions. However, the yellow, I got carried away, and it was very close to the 25%. So it's very yellow.
Well, I love it. I think it's absolutely fabulous. And I think the proportion of yellow is perfect. That is really cool. It's so fun that you dyed it yourself. That's wonderful.
Thanks. Okay, and the next one is actually hand spun. And I had this hand spun skein, and the color was called Unicorn Poop. And it was really kind of horrible. I knew my daughter would have fun with the name of it, but I didn't like it. So I took a portion of it and dyed it with some rhodamine red. And then that's what I've been able to use as the assigned color.
Well, that is fantastic as well. I love it. Hand spun and hand dyed. That is great. I'm
And
also got that shade with rhodamine red, because every time I try using that color, I get some sort of ghastly screaming pink.
yes, I was quite surprised, because our sample in our guild that we have in our book is screaming pink, but dyed over the kind of putrid green. It ended up being a really
That's why,
color.
yes. Green will actually calm pinks down tremendously, because they're complementary colors.
Mm-hmm.
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing those.
the third one that I don't have here, and I'm really sorry, because I dyed it with the theme of it being Northern Lights. And so it's a pretty blue, dark black shawl and has highlights of kind of a fuchsia and lime green for the Northern Lights section. And I did a much smaller section than I had on my very first one with the yellow, and it's turned out really nicely.
Well, gorgeous. Are you on social media?
I am.
I would love it if you would post them because it would be fabulous to share those with other people as well. I just think they're fabulous.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
They were wonderful. Next up, we've got Diane W. Hi, Diane.
Hi, thank you. So I'm calling in from Southern California,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's great to hear all the great Canadian speaking. I love it. So this is mine. This is gentian, the gentian colorway. Oh, the camera's not doing so great, but anyway, there it is.
Hold it up against yourself and then don't move, and then it'll be able to adjust. There you go.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm
Yeah, it looks
moving
good.
right along. I think someone else in the room also was talking about how fun this pattern is. It's very liberating. So I'm following the directions, but if I feel like I don't want to put a sea foam stitch there, I want to put the other one, you know, just as you go, kind of following the general idea and the general design. But I feel like if I've got a sea foam and then the other stitch, or I won't purl it, I'll just do a stockinette in the blue. It's very, very meditative. And I really, I thank you for this design. It's really lovely. When I am not trying to finish a project, when I feel like I just want to knit for relaxation, this is what I go to.
Well, that's fantastic.
Thank
And I
you.
love what you've done there. I really like the way that you've placed the stitches. That is very fun.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's I don't know if I did that stitch right, but I'm happy with it. So
You did. It
okay,
looks
cool.
great.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Next up, we've got Kate Wiggins.
Here I am. Here I am. All right. I love this pattern. This is my little, I'm the slowest knitter in the free world. Just saying. My grandma taught me when I was 7 years old. She taught me how to knit slowly. So that is exactly what I do. But I'm really, for exactly the same reasons, really enjoying the freedom that this pattern allows. And
I'm afraid we're losing some of the sound.
I don't know. The computer is just so adorable in London, Ontario. So as I said, I'm slow, but I love the freedom of doing this. And I'm so excited about this Cal that I actually went on the website today and ordered up a gnome, because my granddaughter is an absolute gnome freak. So I'm looking forward to receiving even more wool from you so that I can knit slowly and hopefully create her gnome by Christmas and finish this by Christmas too. But I do it every evening, and I just I love doing it. It really actually, to be honest, it stops me from drinking quite so much scotch at night. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Well, you're so welcome. It's absolutely beautiful work. And sometimes, like slow and steady wins the race, and, the work is really gorgeous. So I think that's a win. I know that I spent a lot of years where I really couldn't afford a lot of yarn, and it was extremely frustrating that I was a faster knitter. I would have given anything to slow down. And in fact, I quite enjoy stranded knitting these days because I'm not fast at stranded knitting. So I can spend more time just enjoying the process instead of going, darn, I've run out of yarn again. And I think you will enjoy the next gnome cowl. It's actually a really cute one, and it's not too fiddly, so that I think it's going to be the same sort of meditative type process where, you know, you're going to be able to finish it without wanting to rip your hair out, and you'll have something really cute when you're done. We can't say any more about it than that because we're not supposed to reveal details, but it's a cute gnome.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed that. Next up, we've got Donna Gilligan. Hi,
Hi.
Donna.
Hi. Well, I just love the pattern, love the yarn, the colorway, and yeah, can't say enough about it. And I love the names you give your yarn. This was the kit with Dragon's Blood colorway. So
Well, your shawl is beautiful, and I think that both Heather and I are super excited to see it because we both really wanted to choose that color and ended up not knitting it, and we're really thrilled to see what it looks like knit up.
yeah,
So
I'm not sure if I'm not sure if it's really showing, like the color, but in real life, it's beautiful.
well, your shawl is gorgeous. I really like how you've placed your stitches. It's really, really lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a fun cowl.
Good.
Well, that was wonderful. Next up, we've got Hillary.
Hi, just show you quick. I haven't gotten very far, but just started. I have two really little kids, so I just get to do it a little bit at night, but I've been really enjoying it. I really like the colorway, the Alexandrite effect. I love purple. As you can see, I wear purple, all the time. So I'm excited to continue it. And it's a really fun pattern, as the others said. The freedom is nice in it, and you get to create, which usually in knitting, you have to just follow the pattern and that's that. But I am really enjoying the creativity that you get to do with it. So thanks. I'm enjoying
Well,
it.
you're very welcome. It is beautiful. It's coming along really gorgeous. And I'm going to suggest, like, if you're ever knitting a plain item, no matter whether it's a sock or a shawl or a sweater, if you've got one of these hand-dyed yarns, now you know the secret behind assigned pooling. You can throw a stitch in anywhere, and it could be any kind of stitch. So I saw something really cool on social media a while back, and the person had taken a cowl where the colors were just kind of forming blotches. And what she did was she put moss stitch in the pools that it was forming. So instead of it making an unsightly blob, she made it work for her. So this is one of the things that you can do with this in future.
Awesome. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Hillary. Next up, we've got Deborah Sue.
Okay, I'm turning my camera on as well, since I can hardly show with the camera off. But
Just hang on one second, Deborah Sue. Okay, yeah. Sorry,
and
I couldn't spotlight you till you had the camera. So.
Okay, and I hadn't realized I had a background on. Let me turn that off.
It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I love the background. Okay, so this is a mix of juniper and gentian.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
And so I'm just varying them, going back and forth between the two more or less haphazardly, and figuring that's the way it would be in a rock garden.
Yes, I love it. That is brilliant.
And I'm doing it on the nettle yarn rather than the Socknado, and it's been just a dream to knit with. I love it.
Well, I am thrilled with that. And you're going to really like it once it's blocked out. And then it's going to be fun to wear because that yarn is so temperature regulating. I will literally throw shawls on when I'm too hot that have the nettle in there because it's like putting an air conditioner on. Not an icy air, it's just so nice. Oh, so neat. It's just so exciting to see everybody's work.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Cool. So I'm going to
Next up, we've got, oh,
Dan.
sorry, go ahead, please.
Next person. I'm just going to ask Wendy to do our second gift certificate draw in the background. So if she can work on that, then you can spotlight the next person now.
Okay, we've got Donna in Langley.
Hi there. First, I want to say I'm the one that posted the picture of I didn't know what to do. I did the first little bit, I did the second little bit, and lo and behold, I am now on the second skein, and it is lovely. I too enjoy having the freedom to do whatever I want with it, knowing that it will still turn out, because I'm a little bit obsessive about having, well, I'm obsessive about many things. I've loved to the, oh yes, rock purple crest, it is lovely. I really enjoyed the blocking that you showed, Caroline, because I have struggled with it so often that my husband now helps me. But now he can watch the video with me, and maybe he'll do it all by himself anyway. Because he's a nice guy.
Yeah. If you have any
also, I took this to knitting class, to my knitting group. It's a group of 15 people at the library, and I'm not even the worst knitter in the group, which is quite amazing. But because I have had success with it, I think 7 of the people are getting yarn now for it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's the color is lovely, but also all the explanations. And because they know me so well, they think, wow, if she could actually understand it, it must be, it's a beginner shawl.
Well,
so it's great.
I would say that you not just understood it, but you've knit an absolutely beautiful piece. It looks wonderful.
Pretty.
And I would have said that you were an expert. So
Pardon me?
I would have said you're an expert. It's absolutely lovely. It's beautifully
No.
worked.
I knit socks for 60 years for my family. I never read a pattern. I only knit socks. And when I retired, I decided to try to read a pattern, but it's always confusing. And because I'm dyslexic, it's a little hard too. So I watched the video. Thank you very much, Wendy, for reminding me where it was.
No problem.
Quite a few times. And if I wasn't dyslexic, I guess I'd just watch it once and figure it out. But the fact that I can do it, I'm really, really happy about it. And yes, it's beautiful.
That's
Thank you very
awesome.
much.
Thank you so much.
Pardon me?
I'm going to spotlight Wendy now and give her a chance to draw her prize here.
Thank you. I have used my random number generator and counted squares on the screens. And our next winner is Nancy Andrzak. And I was watching you. She just threw her hands up in the air and grinned.
Congratulations. That's
Congratulations, Nancy.
Okay, now I'm going to give everybody the second word, and that is fun. So summer fun will get you an extra gift on your next order, and we have 28 gifts in total. So there's a limited time on it. If you're watching this video 3 months from now, I'm super sorry, but I think we'll be out by then.
I'm going to spotlight Dr. Jen next.
I keep forgetting that I'm using my work Zoom, so you'll have to forgive the name. Jen is fine. We don't need formalities.
Okay.
Here is mine. So I'm using a yarn that is not ancient arts because I moved from Ontario to Nova Scotia, and where I am in Nova Scotia without a car is in a drought of ancient arts yarn. So instead, I decided to use something that was very local to me, Handmaiden, and this is their Stone and Ivy colorway. So the gray is the planned pooling color, and then all the rest of the blues and greens, I just did regular stockinette, and finished my first ball earlier yesterday, or I guess late yesterday. And now I'm on ball number 2.
Well, that is gorgeous. And you know, one of the things that I never do with our cows is restrict the brand of yarn, because I think knitting is about building community and enjoying each other's company and seeing what we all create. So I'm really happy actually to see some of these alternate yarns, because I just want to inspire knitters. And I think you chose a fabulous colorway. And I love that it's another Canadian and that they have these Canadian themed colors. So I think you chose really, really well. And it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Now I'm having shawl
Thank
envy.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We've got Karen next.
So I am like almost everybody else doing purple rock cress. I'm about 60 rows from getting to do the fun border, but I'm really enjoying this. It's a lot of fun. It's good TV knitting, which is always a bonus.
I think your video has frozen, Karen, but it's actually giving me a really good view of your shawl, and it's beautiful. There we go. You're moving again.
Yay! So this is a really fun knit. I like how it's kind of intuitive, and once you get started on it, it just kind of flows.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really like the way that you position things too, like the way that you've decided to, you know, let the pooling do a little bit of work for you. I think it's gorgeous. I'm like, yeah, now I got to knit one in purple rock cress. I like it.
Thank you, Karen. That was excellent.
Thank you.
I've got Tanya next. Hello, Tanya.
Hi there. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good. Yeah, nice to see you too. So I've chosen, this is actually my second shawl. I've also got one in the purple rock cress going, but this is, yes, Bay of Fundy. And I'm really, really enjoying this one. It absolutely reminds me of low tide in the bay, and that the blue kind of reminds me of tide pools. And the orangey bits there are like sandbars.
I love it, Tanya. I'm so glad you chose that color, because I really enjoyed your purple rock cress shawl, but I really was hoping somebody would use Bay of Fundy for this one. And it is gorgeous, really nicely knit.
It is. I just love working on it.
That's great. Assigned pooling, by the way, is very, very addictive. So you may find that now that's all you're going to want to do for a while. I know that when I got into color pooling back, the first project that really hooked me was in 2004. And it was like, oh my goodness, that was all I could make myself do for, I think, like 2 years, was pooling projects of various different sorts. So it's addictive and it's fun.
If I could say something quick, and that is, it amazes me how different the shawl looks when the assigned pooling is a light color instead of a dark color. We saw that with Jen's Nova Scotia based one, and with Grace's Three Valley Gap. I think this looks really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is nice to work it in reverse as compared to the purple rock cress.
I agree.
Lake
Really
Louise is like that too. Lake Louise is so pretty because it's the white color.
I agree. Very fun.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah.
So have we reached the end of the show and tell portion?
We have. Is it time to put Stephanie on?
I think it is. So Stephanie is going to show us some ways to style our finished shawls.
Hi, everybody. I might flip the light on. I'm seeing myself as I'm spotlighted and I look a bit maybe grainy. So I'm just gonna flip my light on here.
So while Steph's putting her light on, I'm going to thank her once again for showing us the styling of the shawls. Steph wears a lot of shawls and she wears them with great panache in class. And I know that when I've seen myself on Zoom attempting to show people how to style things, I always look weird because I'm hunched over because of where my camera's positioned. So take it away, Steph.
All right, so I've got Caroline's sample here, which is is it the medium? Are we calling it the medium with the two skeins?
Yes.
So yeah, I love wearing things around my neck. So I would probably, just for something casual, throw it around like so. I like that with this shape of shawl because I've knit a few different shawl patterns with this shape. It does sort of like this cute little curly Q here at the end. So I would probably just wear the shawl like this, depending on what I was wearing, or if I'm cold. I am actually cold right now. It's cold where I'm living. I also like it when things are really snug on my neck as well. So I would probably do like a cute little I would do like a cute little tie as well. If you don't mind that much bulk. I mean, it's different in the winter, maybe not in the summer. We had someone show and tell from California. It's probably like super hot down there right now. And, you're probably not going to have like this little knot on your neck. But so yeah, so I would wear it kind of like that. My camera's at a little bit of an angle, so you can't see me.
I can see good stuff. It looks really good. And I
Okay.
absolutely love the way you've styled it there. I've never worn one of the asymmetric shawls quite like that. And I'm like, why didn't I think of that? That's really cool.
And depending on the size too, like I don't know that I'd be able to do this with one of the with the one skein shawl. But I also just really like it with the wider end here, and just kind of you can see that it's draped across my back here.
And there's a little trick that you can do if you're wearing the shawl like that. And the front, it wants to flop to the front. So that tail on the back wants to flop forward. Is put a knot on that end, a loose knot, and that'll actually help weight it a bit. And then it stays put. So
yeah, and that's what else I really enjoy with is I'll put a little knot on the longer side. And then you can see it kind of brings the length of the shawl on both sides to the same length. And if you're super ambitious and you don't stop at 2 skeins and you like maybe, add a third or something like that, and you have quite a bit more length, that little knot can also, like if you're just wearing it over your shoulders because it's like a cool summer evening. See here. Then that knot will help with the length so that it's not like dragging about.
I love my find your fade, but you got to put a couple of knots in that puppy because it's
11. Yeah. So so that's kind of how I would wear it. And again, like if you've got cold shoulders, you can just like, it's that nice kind of shape to put over your shoulders for sure. But yeah, I'm definitely a classic kind of like kerchief style gal. And I'll even sometimes too, if you don't want to knot the end, or if you don't want to knot the like do like a little tie, you can even just sort of like tuck those, you can tuck that longer end in, and then you've got both on the one side there. So yeah, I think it's like the perfect like length to do this. It's great for transitional weather, or transitional wearing, I like to call it. So yeah.
Very cool. Thank you, Steph.
No problem. I might not take this off now. I might not even bring it back to work.
Yeah, but see, I want to try now because I haven't ever worn a shawl in quite some of those ways. And I'm like, why didn't I think of that?
I'm looking at it and I was like, well, blue is one of my favorite colors, but I always pick blue. And so I'll show, because I've been working on my shawl while you've been visiting, and I thought I would show and tell, seeing as that, and of course I'm right in the middle of a row, but this is the zinnia. See if I can flip it here without dropping my stitches. There we go. This is the zinnia. I believe Wendy put that in the newsletter today. If you get a newsletter. So yeah.
So the zinnia has a lot more orange, you'll notice, than the blue, and that's because we actually paint the skeins with a different length of stripe in the two different colorways. So the zinnia has a longer repeat of color as compared to the gentian, so you get that real flash of vim, vigor, and vitality, as I like to think of it. That would be a fun one that you could pair up with a contrast stripe on the end too. I mean, obviously you can do that with any of the shawls, but the zinnia would be really, really cute with that.
The size of this 2 skein shawl is starting to have me question my second one as to whether or not I should do it as a 1 skein or a 2 skein. But I was gonna do Bay of Fundy, and I don't know if we have any more of that left. So
actually, we do. We have 2.
There's 3 skeins in production.
Ah.
What?
Unless someone gets to it first.
You're making us all knit second shawls.
If we've got the time, we've actually got Rhonda's just put up her hand, and I think she'd like to do a show and tell too.
All right. Well, bye everybody.
Thank you, Steph.
No problem.
Well, hi, Rhonda. I've got you spotlighted.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to show off my zinnia. I just love it. I don't know, is that pretty good? It looks like a blood orange shawl, and I love it.
That's fantastic. All right, that does it. I have to knit one in that color for sure.
And I've got, this is the first skein. As you can see, it's a little more the yellow, white. And then the second skein, of course, I didn't buy it at the same time, is a little more orangey red.
Yeah, I think that with the first, you probably got the first production run of the colorway with the first skein. And I think that we were a little bit more restrained with the orange on that one. And then, you know, we just kind of like, if you're going to go for it with the rest of them.
It looks, I mean, it blends in just perfectly to me.
Great fade. That's really wonderful.
I just wanted to show it off.
It's beautiful. Thank you for taking the time to do that. I'm just excited to see that one, and Steph's like, oh, Zinnia's orange. I have great passion for orange, and I don't knit near enough of it.
Oh, I love bright colors.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, that was beautiful, and you've got a beautiful cat too. So
yeah, his brother's around here too, so they help.
Everybody, is there anything else that anyone wants to add before we close for the night? Any questions that you want to ask?
Oh, that was very inspirational, and I bet it's really fun for you to see what we've all been doing with it. And it's so nice that other people have inspired their groups too to do it. That's fun.
I agree. You know,
it's very much.
It's difficult for me to actually express how lovely this is, because it's just so exciting to see people take an idea that you had and then make it their own. And I absolutely love seeing other knitters work. And, you know, it brings us all together. And it's so fun that we're from all sorts of different areas here too. I really, really appreciate that. So, and I love, you know, the variety and how everybody's shawl, whether we're using the same colors or not, it's so uniquely ours. So our own knitting reflects that. So that's something that I've really enjoyed seeing tonight too. Well, then I will say thank you, everyone. Thank you for that observation, Teresa. And I really was glad that you could take the time to join us this evening. The CAL will run until August 19th. And if you have any questions, or if you just want to share, please do, because it's not that the CAL is done, even if the Zooms are now. So, you know, we want to keep the fun going. And I really look forward to seeing more views of these shawls as they continue.
And you know what else would be nice to see? The edgings. If people do edgings, what color they choose.
Yes. We've been doing some chatting behind the scenes with a number of people about borders and colors for borders. And I know there's some really interesting plans.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Teresa. All right. Well, like I say, I think we should end here. Thank you for giving us your extra time, and make sure, like I say too, to at least put one post up so that we enter you in further draws. And there's some good prizes to be had. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And I'm going to wish you happy knitting. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Night.